Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I would like to present General Boris Smyslovski, alias Arthur Holston, alias von Regenau, to you. I am focused mostly on his activity during the World War II. Smyslovski was born in Terjoki. At the time, it was a town in Grand Duchy of Finland. Now it's Russian town. Da, tak, yes. In the same place as Finland's founding father, Marshal Karl Gustav Mannerheim. Smyslovski received his graduation from the Mikhailovskaya Artillery School. He was an artillery officer. In artillery school, and he was an artillery officer like his father and grandfather. Here you can see Smyslovski's parents and Smyslovski when he was young. He rose to rank of captain of the Imperial Russian Army. In the 1917 he took part in the Cadet uprising in Moscow. During the fight was wounded. We don't know details about his participation in this fight. However, we know that he joined the Society for Defense of Motherland and Freedom, created and led by Boris Savinkov, a social revolutionary. Smyslovski took part in the Russian Civil War on the side of the Whites. He moved to southern Russia, where he volunteered with the armed forces of South Russia, commanded by first Anton Denikin and next by Piotr Wrangel. At the beginning of 1920, part of the army under command of General Bredov fled to Poland, and where Boris Savinkov was trying to form a new Russia armed forces. This formation was to send to the front as the part of Polish army fighting the Bolsheviks. Eventually, because the ceasefire between Poland and the Bolsheviks, part of them were transported to Crimea, part of them decided to stay in Poland. Among of them was Smyslovski. Smyslovski in the 20s was recruited by German military intelligence Abwehrstelle. We do not know details about this recruitment. However, we know that he was trained as an intelligence officer in Królewiec, and he also studied at the secret German General Staff Military Academy. At the time, Germany were not allowed to, his major was intelligence, of course. At that time, Germany were not allowed to have its highest command over army, so this was displayed with the Truppenamt, the Army Administration Office. That's why all those studies are kept in secret. This time was crucial for Smyslovski because he developed his contacts among German officers, fellow officers. The first, the second, as he said, after many years of the war, he wrote, actually, I was born as a soldier in ranks of the Russian Imperial Guard, but I grew up in the German General Staff. I am thankful them for a great military knowledge I have gone through all my life. And as we can compare for Smyslovski and Vlasov, we see that there was between them controversy about a way of liberation Russia from the Bolsheviks, and Smyslovski in this discussion claimed that the best way to achieve this goal was to go along the German army. Vlasov was rather in favor of encourage Russians living in Soviet Union to rise against the Bolshevik. This, in my opinion, and this controversy came from Smyslovski's relations with the Germans, with anyway, in the second part of the 30s, Smyslovski joined the Marinis Order of the Symbolic Lodge of the ancient and primitive Egyptian Eastern Rite of Memphis, Mizraim. This was esoteric group. We don't know what was a reason of his involvement in Freemasonry, whether it was a task he got from the Abwehrstelle or just personal interest in esotery. Regardless of intention, we must say that this way he gave very good access to the government circles in Warsaw. At the time, Freemasonry were very popular among politicians of the Piłsudski's movement in Poland, and the movement Freemasonry was also very popular among so-called liberal intelligentsia. It is important to mention this because this milieu was infiltrated by the Soviet Razviedka because of its close cooperation with the illegal Communist Party of Poland. Those relationships were analyzed even through the war by the Polish underground counterintelligence. There is a very rich evidence from that time, counterintelligence evidence telling us about Freemasonry circles in Warsaw and Smyslovski's role in this. After Germany invaded Poland in 1939, Smyslovski joined the Russian Military Union. At that time in Germany, the organization was led by Alexei von Lampe, General Alexei von Lampe, a white Russian living in Berlin, and Smyslovski was assigned as a chief of staff of the union residing in Warsaw. After the German invasion of the Soviet Union, he began to work for the staff of the Army's Group North as an intelligence officer under Nondeger von regional at the rank of major. He commanded organizing groups of White Russians and Soviet POWs fighting with the Germans against the Bolsheviks. In July 1941, there was formed First Training Battalion, and in the fall, and according to Smyslovski's words, he formed 12 intelligence battalion schools operating in the rear of the front line on the German side, were being trained 4 generals, several hundred officers, and 60,000 soldiers. On September 24th, 1941, Smyslovski spoke in front of soldiers gathered in one of those training intelligence schools. Every one of you who volunteered our ranks has to work for Russia. I work as a staff officer. You will work in reconnaissance. You have to remember that you serve Russia, and your victory brings resurrection of great and national Russia. So we can see that his focus. We can see his focus, and we can also see that he had his own agenda, even if he served the Germans through the whole the war. In March 1942, Smyslovski established Special Staff Russia, Sonderstab Russland, responsible for counterintelligence and counterinsurgency activity against the Soviet partisan movement. As the commander-in-chief was appointed Colonel Boris Smyslovski. For over a few months, the staff was transformed into Special Division Russia. His ambition was to create Russian armed forces, not only just intelligence units fighting the partisans, but armed forces of resurrected Russia. The staff was subordinated to WWII, special branch of Abwehrstelle on the Eastern Front. Headquarters of the staff was located in Warsaw under cover of the Eastern Construction Enterprise Hilchen. The tasks of Smyslovski's organization were collecting intelligence on Soviet partisan detachments operating on the German-occupied territories, area of operations, morale, communication with the Soviet partisan staff, equipment, armament, and KVD activity. They also Smyslovski's people also planted agents inside the detachments. Beside the intelligence activity, those agents had to encourage partisans to change the side and finally fight the Soviets. Cadre of the staff of the division consisted of White Russians, Soviet Russians from POW camps, Belarusians and Ukrainians. Part of them served the Ukrainian People's Republic Army in 1920, and next the Polish Army as contractor officers. However, the special staff worked for the Abwehrstelle like the Russian volunteer units, regardless of their local subordination, was presented. The staff was presented as a part of one organization, the Russian Liberation Army, which was in fact a German propaganda operation. That meant that the staff soldiers and officers used German uniforms with Russian brassards and badges with colors of Russian flag. Please see, here's Smyslovski in WWII uniform with Russian Liberation Army with brassards, Russian brassards with the Russian.
I don't know how to say.
Okay, with Russian ensigns here, and you can see Smyslovski with the German uniform.
The epaulets are different at the little round sign on the hat.
Yes. His Sonderstab R consisted of 4 sections: operational intelligence led by Colonel Mikhail Shapovalov, ex-Soviet officer; counterintelligence Lieutenant Volodymyr Bondorovsky, very interesting person. Before the war, he cooperated with the Polish section, with the Polish Second Bureau. During the war, he cooperated with Smyslovski, but from the beginning of 1944, he started to deal with the Gestapo. Propaganda was led by Alexander Vugler of the National Labor Union. This was Russian political party, political organization, and administration logistics Plotnikov. They were organized the 4 field stations from south to north. A. Simferopol, it was Crimea. B. Kiev, Ukraine. I mean, they collect intelligence from area of Ukraine. Chernihiv, Belarus. The Pskov, and the station in Pskov collected intelligence from the Baltic states. We do not know how many people served the division. Our estimation is between 300 and 1,000. Between 300 people and 1,000. After the war, Smyslovski claimed that he also supervised local anti-partisan detachments formed by Wehrmacht units in cooperation with Abwehrstelle. I would like to underline there's a big difference between such detachments organized by Abwehrstelle, the military intelligence, and political intelligence, Sonderdienst.
Sicherheitsdienst, Sonderdienst, that was civilian supervised local Volksdeutsche Police. Sicherheitsdienst, SD.
They have double subordination. They had double subordination. An agent candidate of the special staff. An agent candidate of the special staff has to formally apply for enrollment. He was obliged to fill up an application form and write his biography. After that, he was interviewed by an officer and trained. Before he left for the field, he received instructions: intelligence and counterintelligence, and his tasks as well. There is no detailed information how many of them were transferred behind the front line. The post-Soviet historians estimate that the Soviet counterintelligence services, military and civil, captured 700 of them. It seems that there must have been much more Chinese. Among Smyslovski's people was Boris Kowerda, worth to be mentioned. He was very famous. He was a very famous person before the war, because in 1927 he shot in Warsaw the chief of the Soviet diplomatic mission, Piotr Wojkow, for Wojkow's participation in the execution of the Tsar's family. Among the other person was Petro Diachenko. It is also interesting to take a look at his picture, because he's dressed with the Polish army uniform. This is one of those who served the Polish army as contract officer before the war. During the German invasion, fought the Germans in ranks of the Polish army, and after that they decided cooperate with Germans. German intelligence, with the hope that with Germans' help they resurrect or create their states. Petro Diachenko was Ukrainian. After his cooperation with German intelligence, he was a chief of the station in a small town in northern current eastern North Poland, in Suwałki. He decided to organize Ukrainian armed forces. Of course, because of for Smyslovski's activity, he became a target for the Soviet intelligence, and it is also notable issue that the post-Soviet historians claim that they couldn't fully infiltrate the staff. However, one person got very close to Smyslovski's people. This was Artur Ritter-Jastrzębski. Now at this picture he's in the uniform of the Communist Army in Poland after 1944. He was promoted to general rank after the war. During the war, he was a NKVD operative, and he acted as a Baltic German. In the summer of 1942, Jastrzębski, as a Baltic German, made acquaintance with a white Russian immigrant, Colonel Nikolai Tumanov, ex-General Wrangel's army officer. Thanks to Tumanov's help, Ritter got information about life of Russians gathered in Warsaw. Eventually, he recruited Tumanov, addressing him following words. Your motherland needs help. I appeal to you as a Soviet intelligence officer. It means that he compromised himself with Nikolai Tumanov's eyes. Who knows you are an honest man, and that you cannot consent to the criminal fascism that is destroying your country and mine. Enough of this madness. Setting with Tumanov's help private meetings with the intelligence officers, Erytria Strzemski learned about planned by Smyslovski staff divertive operations, at least about few of them. For instance, the son of the old emigre Brunner was departing with large sum of money to Pskov. This information comes directly from Jastrzębski's memoirs published in Poland in the 70s. With large sum of money to Pskov, where the saboteurs would be smuggled from the rear of the Red Army. On another occasion, they also learned, Tumanov and Erytria Strzemski also learned that Shapovalov, the chief of intelligence section, would be going to Kharkov for the same reason. Here is also Bogusław Hrynkiewicz. Bogusław Hrynkiewicz, an agent of the NKVD. At that time, he cooperated with Ritter Jastrzębski. However, Ritter Jastrzębski used German Sturmabteilung uniform, but Hrynkiewicz acted as a chief of the anti-communist intelligence of the underground army of sword and plow movement. Smyslovski met him several times. Smyslovski established communication with Hrynkiewicz, but this way some Smyslovski's people made acquaintance with him, and they took part in the largest operation carried out by the communists against the Polish underground. It was a capture of anti-communist archive collected by the secret civil administration in Warsaw. It was carried out by Hrynkiewicz with some Bondarowski's people led by Smyslovski's people led by Włodzimierz Bondarowski.
The archive? The operation?
Yes.
Excuse me. Just making sure.
As you can imagine, Smyslovski became a subject of interest of underground intelligence as well. He was watched by Home Army intelligence, National Armed Forces intelligence, and secret civil administration intelligence. You can see pictures, photos of reports, underground reports on Smyslovski. In opinion of Polish underground, he expressed great respect for Anglo-Americans. It comes from directly such reports, and had good knowledge of the activity of Polish conspiratorial circles. he read Conspirational Press. I think he was he also took part in creating one of underground bulletins, the Liberated Thought, that was published by Freemasonry in Warsaw. In general, he approached Polish matters with understanding, and for the and of those reasons, the underground recognized him as someone neutral toward the Polish cause. Nevertheless, on May 17th, in Warsaw took place an unsuccessful attempt to assassinate Smyslovski, because even though the central cell of Polish counterintelligence wasn't recognized him as a foe, on the Warsaw district level, it was made decision to kill him. He was misidentified as a Ukrainian officer responsible for anti-Polish activity in WWII. As I said, this operation wasn't concluded with success. That team was decimated by the Germans, and after the war, one of the soldiers who survived this operation shared his remarks on this operation with journalists in Poland. He stated that we were probably carrying out a mission ordered by Soviet agents within the British Secret Intelligence Service, those from Kim Philby and the Cambridge Five. Smyslovski was indeed an enemy of the Soviets, not Poles, whom he knew very well, as he had been living in Warsaw since the 1920s. It's true. It's true. Recognized the underground knew very well him as a person. He knew very well his activity as a member of the Russian milieu in Warsaw, but in fact they knew almost nothing about his activity, his anti-Soviet activity. All those information on Smyslovski, the intelligence received from outside. We do not know people planted by the underground into the Sonderstab R, except Lieutenant Stanisław Mancewicz. He was a special agent at the highest command of the National Armed Forces. Apart from his activity in Sonderstab R, he was a member. He served as an operative at the anti-communist cell of the Counterintelligence. We know it because this is the only one person who wrote report on the West after the war. Very small, very brief report, but very helpful for us. I mentioned that Smyslovski was involved in the liberated thought issue. The bulletin was published formally, if we say these words regarding conspirational activity.
Openly?
No. Openly means if we can say, if we can use those words. And he also the bulletin was published by the Polish Movement of Slav Liberation Union, and we know very little about this organization. They joined the secret administration political structures. However, one of the leaders of the organization was compromised as a German agent. Joint operations, with the Polish underground. First, in September 1941, the Musketeers secret intelligence service received from Musketeer intelligence service subordinated to the Home Army, but with the subordinated to the Home Army, received from Smyslovski a proposition of assistance in the transfer of a group of officers behind the front line on the Soviet rear to the Polish army, for at the time being formed by General Władysław Anders. The command of the Musketeers hoped for acquiring intelligence information and gaining political benefits from this joint action. The operation also got full support and authorization from the highest command of the Home Army, in context of the possibility of establishing communications. The liaison officer patrol sent to Soviet Union was arrested by Polish counterintelligence led under General Anders. He was afraid that they were compromised by the Soviets before, and accepting them would mean breaking up Polish-Soviet relationships, which were very tense at that time. General Anders wanted to gather all Poles imprisoned by the Soviets, and Soviets wanted to keep them at jails. The latest joint operation was to getting assistance to the other liaison officer patrol sent by the command of the Holy Cross Brigade to General Anders, General Anders Second Corps in Italy. This operation succeeded. They crossed border of Grand Duchy of Liechtenstein along Smyslovski's army. The other question is an assassination attempt on Alexander Würgler. As I said earlier, Würgler was the chief of the propaganda section of the Sonderstab. But he cooperated. He came from the National Labor Union. This was a Russian nationalist organization, and Smyslovski suspected that he cooperated with the Gestapo against the Sonderstab and Smyslovski's activity. He decided to kill Vogler. In fact, Vogler was killed at the end of December 1943, and I put this information on the chart named Joint Operations because Smyslovski was trying to recruit that team from people involved in underground. Polish underground.
So
We do not know for sure who was recruited, but it is possible that this assassination was carried out by the Poles cooperated with Smyslovski.
Private operation.
We can call this private operation. Oh, here is Stanisław Aronson. I quoted his words earlier. During the night on my in December 1943, the Special Division was dissolved, and Smyslovski was under arrest for unauthorized relationships with the Polish and Ukrainian underground. This was triggered by a visit of a leader of the Ukrainian insurgent army, Poliska Sich, in Warsaw. His name was Taras Borowicz, nom de guerre, Bulba. Smyslovski refused to hand Bulba over to the secret police, Gestapo. After a 6 months long investigation, Smyslovski was cleared of charges and started to organize next structure of anti-Soviet intelligence. It was United Russian Intelligence School. It was located near Warsaw. Eventually, at the end of the war, he moved to Lower Silesia, where he started to organize the Green Army of special purposes. Eventually, he became the commander-in-chief of the first Russian National Army at rank of general. At the beginning of May, he crossed the border between the Third Reich and the Grand Duchy of Liechtenstein. We can see a list of people who came in with him. However, this list made by Liechtensteinians was completed after 3 years they appeared in Liechtenstein. So I think we can say about these numbers as a minimum of people, of Smyslovski's people fleeing to Liechtenstein. The story the story of the first Russian national army in Liechtenstein is the most famous part of his activity in the 90s of the last century. There was made a movie on those events. It's called Eastern Wind, where Smyslovski and his people were depicted in a very positive way. During 3 years, almost all those people left Liechtenstein, mostly for Argentina. So you can see soldiers and civilians of the first Russian national army. In 1947, Smyslovski left Liechtenstein for Argentina as his people, and there he became a leader of the Marshal Alexander Suvorov Russian War Veterans Union in Argentina. At the time he studied intelligence and counterintelligence, in theory of intelligence and counterintelligence and counterinsurgency as well. During his stay there, he focused on his social activity. However, he also was invited by Juan Perón to be his advisor on counterinsurgency and counterterrorism. He lectured at the Argentinian military schools. He also was an advisor to Argentinian army. Between 1956 and 1966, Smyslovski and his wife lived in New York City. And at the mid of the 60s, he was invited by Reinhard Gehlen, who was Smyslovski's superior during the war, to Germany to be an advisor to German general staff and lecturer at German military schools as well. Smyslovski in 1975 returned to Liechtenstein because he maintained very good relationships with the authorities of Liechtenstein, and he died in 1988. Thank you.